frost in the grass glitters. Just put in for a while until it hurts and now it stings. Before turning on, I guess you win, you lose some.
Hey there, and welcome to the next video. We're going to have a brief look at trait trees, which is very complicated, but hopefully we can knock it out the park. As you can remember before, when I did all my stats and analyze pages and all of that, and we had a look at all of it, I said to you, I am trait treeless at the moment. Obviously, I want to have a look at blue builds, yellow builds, yellow blue builds, yellow red blue builds, blue yellow blue red, whatever. We have a look at it all, we get through it, and I'll explain to you as much as I can, as simple as possible, but also as hopefully as informative as possible. So basically, let's have a look at your basic blue. Powerful heals obviously gives you a lot of control. It kind of gives you it's a very blocked mentality, like it's in terms of, you know, you can just stand there and just smash up bolsters and just kind of keep everybody up, and a lot of like big saving heals, but unfortunately that's pretty much it. There's very little buffing involved, but then again, I mean, you can raise quicker, you can get bigger heals out, you can kind of just boss the raid in terms of big heals. So scoring critical hits increases outgoing healing by 10% for 10 seconds. You can't gain it obviously more than 25, an extra 10% outgoing healing modifier, and a bit of fate and will, which is very minuscule in terms of numbers, but then you get your SOS. So let's go in there. Obviously, reading down the sides, you know, you can read a bit more about the incoming healing buff. I've never really bothered with Code of Resonance, healing ballads, extra snowball effect, which is something I don't really plan towards, but it just kind of pops up every now and then. I use it. Obviously, big ones is the bolster that splashes. Your quarter eye width isn't too bad. The quicker raise is amazing. It's another 300 seconds on top of the 300 seconds already given to you, and then obviously a Cord of Salvation, extra healing, 100%. It's a massive boost. So let's go into blue. To be honest, this is actually my blue tree that I usually use. And let's go legacy by legacy. Obviously, crit in magnitude, like I said before, crit capping is the most important thing. So if you can increase that magnitude to a 20%, when you crit, there's always that chance that that magnitude just jumps up and up. So obviously, nice big heals. The whole idea here is to try and get as many heals in a short space of time. So you want that speed. Now, this is an important one, crit chance. This is hidden. So now we sat on 25% untraded. So now if I trade this, I'm actually going up to 30%. Although, if I look here under my crit, it still says 24, which is technically 25 because of the extra 5k hidden in the allies that I've explained in the ally video. So we're technically actually sat on 30%, but that's a hidden 5%. A lot of times with low trade, you'll find that hidden percentages hide there, and that's why I didn't want to be traded when I showed you all the videos. Now this from red isn't hidden. It's an extra 5k critical chance and extra 5k tactical critical multiplier. So when I trade that extra 5, witness how, okay, it's because it's not traded. Let's say apply. As you can see now, it's gone up to 29, which is technically 30%. So we're sat up on something extremely high already, just by slotting those. So basically, as you can see before, when I score a critical hit, I get the extra 10% outgoing healing. And now on top of that, I've increased my heals technically to 35% crit chance with an extra magnitude. Now on top of that, there is the Soothing Voice, which is an extra modifier on your heals. As far as I don't believe it shows up compared to that. So we're on 66.9. When we trade that, I don't believe it changes. Yeah, it doesn't change, but it is a modifier that is part of your healing build, so it does affect your outrun healing. On top of that, most importantly, remember, as soon as we get to the bolster courage splash, obviously larger bolster courages are a necessity. So to take those 5 points and get the extra 20% bolster, I mean, I'm talking about this is a blue ball. Let's not fool ourselves. So obviously we're going to need that. Now all of a sudden you can see that we've gone from crit magnitude to crit chance. Now all of a sudden something else opens up at the bottom, and that there is a very important skill. It's pretty much one of the most important skills from blue you can get. Critical heals speed up skill use. On every crit you get minus 10% skill induction. So every time you crit in, which is 35% chance now, you're speeding up your inductions by 10%, and then on rank 2, 20%. So just think about it that way. You're speeding up through the gears every single crit, going faster and faster and faster, to the point where you're casting heals quicker and quicker and quicker. So much so that you can almost get to the point where there is zero induction almost. And then on top of that, there's an hourglass looking skill called Quick Melody, which is another 20% skill induction reduction. I almost want to have a look at this from a skill perspective. If I may close the trade tree for a second, let's lock in Bolster Courage. Now have a look at that induction time. 2.3 seconds induction, and that's without any reductions. And actually the only induction we're going to see is Quick Melody. Now, this skill follow-up only appears when you actually start to have criticals heals done. So now when I slot that, I don't know if it will appear on the tooltip. It doesn't, but as you can see there's the 2.3, and then this is the new one, 1.8. So as you can see already, 20% down. Notice the speed at which that has happened. Now on top of that, if I go and I use Resonant Anthem of the Third Age, I'm not sure if this will actually appear on my toolbox. Yes, it does. That's just with my anthems done now. As you can see, I've gone from bolstered using 2.3 seconds all the way down to 1.2 by literally just trading correctly and keeping up my Resonant Anthem of the Third Age. That's pretty much half the duration. Now on top of that, critical heals are going to keep on speeding me up, so much so that you can get to the point of insta bolster encourages if you're quick enough and you're good with your latency. That is a massive savings, and that heal keeps on getting bigger and bigger. As you can see as well, the amount of morale healed every time has been boosted dramatically. Obviously here I traded the extra bolster heals, and then on top of that, Resonant Anthem of the Third Age is 25% skill induction reduction and an extra 10% outgoing heals. So also we boosted pretty much my minimum heal here is what the normal maximum should be almost. So obviously very important to trade correctly. Quicker heals, bigger heals, that's pretty much the game of blue money. Like I said before, we're going to get 100% Court of Salvation at the bottom, and Court of Salvation is obviously one of my favorite skills, mostly due to the fact of, as you can see, as you traded final, it gets 1% max morale for every nearby ally standing close by. And it creates a fellowship heal over time. So that means that any pets, or if Alim's running blue and uses Sikkim and there's tons of pets running around, if those pets are within a certain distance, which I'm not actually sure about, I mean it might be 10 meters, I'm not sure, from that person you're healing, whether it's a tank or someone else, they're basically scoring 1% of their max morale from every nearby ally on an instant heal with a 10-second cooldown on Court of Salvation. That is ridiculously good. Obviously, if you're doing something like the Mordath raid and you've got yourself 2 tanks stood there, and the Cappy tank's attacking by himself on the first boss, when the guard tank's pulling everything together, obviously save the Court of Salvation for the tank where all the DPS are stood around, because that is the tank that's going to take the most healing. Unless obviously you need to, it's just wise to kind of prioritize it for a tank that has more friendly units around. And the phrasing is ally, so I'm pretty sure it's any raid wide, people around. So court observation, bread and butter stuff. Triumphant spirit, like I said before, this is probably one of the most important skills you could get out of your sword. It's pretty much the biggest fellowship wide heal you've got at a 45-second cooldown, because you've traded obviously the cooldown out of your sword. 45 seconds for a massive heal. As I said before, my biggest one that I got was 208k heal so far that I've actually seen. I mean, I might have got bigger ones, but I haven't been paying much attention. I was just kind of running the COS with some friends. Obviously, the big one, you want to save it for when you start to see red on tanks. All that 45 seconds, if you need to, use it, try keep them up with your Court of Salvations and your bolsters, and then, don't worry about it because it will be off cooldown fairly quickly. 45 seconds isn't much. Code of Resonance is a good ability. I first want to point that out. The ones I'm ignoring here is power cost. I've never had a problem with power. I never really bothered with ballads while healing. I mean, bolster is just so much bigger and easier. Unless you're cutting inductions with your major ballad. That is one thing you could be doing, although usually most people cut it with the SOS. Resonant Piercing Cry I do like, and I probably will take it right at the end. I'll explain why. Bubbles are useless. It's only like 1,000 damage with events, which is less than like a millionth of a hit from any mob. Code of Resonance, basically, as soon as you take this, it actually gives you a buff that reduces incoming damage on a tank by 10%, and I think it lasts for 15 seconds. It's not bad, but there's other things I'd rather get than that. What I do is I do build a support blue build, and that's initially what this class trait tree was when I logged on. So if you have two blue minis in the same fellowship, when you kind of need to keep both tanks up, and there's two tanks to focus on that are taking massive damage, like boss 2 of the Mordath raid, I run what I call a support build, where I actually do take that and I use it as a lifeguard basically to try keep on the tanks to make sure they're taking less damage, especially in big points and big hits. I won't take it for now. What I'm going to instead do is I'm going to go for Cry and Call Reset. To be honest, let's have a look at it this way. It's hard to do trait trees and spells separately, but your Cry of the Chorus gives you an extra 38.2% outgoing healing modifier, as you can see right at the bottom. But there's a 2 minute 30 second cooldown. If I had traded my ally the legacy to reduce the cooldown, it's fine, but to reset it and try to maintain that as much as possible, especially in points where you know your tanks are going to take big hits, when you see like a supplicant about to sacrifice himself, or you see, so as I said, into Cries and Call for the Cry and Call reset, mostly just to get that extra 38% outgoing healing. Although if you wanted to, you could probably skimp on that and probably drop it down a bit lower, save a few points, maybe like 2 points or whatever, put in somewhere else. Another kind of decent one to take is the extra mitigations from your SOS. I never was a fan of this back at the 105 cap. I kind of found like it wasn't really as needed for the runs, but it definitely makes a big difference, especially when you try to cut inductions, which obviously I said I'll go into. So basically this is what your blue tree is going to look like. You can take that Resonant Cry now, because obviously we need an even number of points for when we dig into red and yellow. I've obviously taken extra crits from red. That's pretty much a staple of every single time you build. You will try to take that, because even in yellow, you want that extra crit and you want that extra speed. Big ones now obviously Inspire Fellows. You want to get up to the minus 4% incoming damage, which is, in my opinion, really good. Obviously that's traded. I want to get, to be honest, Anthem cooldown isn't important. What you want is you want extended anthems for the duration. Remember, like I explained to you in your ally video, the longer your anthems remain up, the less you have to refresh them, the less time you waste in not healing. And obviously, as well, when you start to stack anthems, that is paramount. Obviously, because the longer the anthems last up, the more the DPS have them for, so they can use them. So with this trade set and with the ally gun and their cooldown in general, I think it's about 1 minute 10 seconds that they last up for. So that's a really good one. And obviously you need 3 points in stamina to get it. Just a note, if you're going to actually stack in this tree, and this is your blue stacking tree, you'll actually have to put 2 points into vocal stamina, because if it's not maxed, you won't be able to get 2 anthems per a Cry of the Chorus cooldown. Sounds complicated, but it's not, because Cry of the Chorus lasts, I can't remember how long, I think it's 12 seconds, I think. I can't remember exactly how long. It says 10, but I think it's actually 12 seconds. So basically you cast it, you stack an anthem, 10 seconds later you stack another. Oh no, it is 10 seconds. Your anthem reduces by 10, so you can actually get them in. That's how it is. So you can pretty much stack 2. If you do not have 4 points into vocal stamina, you cannot stack anthems in this trade tree. So when I take out these 2 points, this is completely just a healing trade tree. I do not stack anthems through this trade tree. And then what I do in all my builds, pretty much, I go for full tactical mastery. It is such a waste of 12 points, other than the fact that you get a 5% tactical mitigation right at the bottom. You cannot stop here. You need that extra 5% tactics, and that takes you up to a 45% tactically mitigated minstrel at full mitigations. This is pretty much the build that I use. This is my bread butter blue healing build. Obviously for solo runs, or if I'm the main minstrel, things to be in mind is certain things stack. Obviously Fellowship's Heart stacks, any kind of heal over times like Court of Salvations and stuff stack. The only thing that doesn't stack between 2 minstrels is Inspire Fellows. So if there are 2 minstrels in the same fellowship, usually what I end up doing is taking that 5 points and putting it into Code of Resonance, Piercing Cry. So because basically that Code of Resonance only has a chance to proc on crits, and if you take the extra 30% crit chance, it's got more of a chance to to crit. So what I would do is, if I had to do it, I would take these 5 points out, put 1 in there, and then maybe put a few into Shield and Cry, which is a damage reflect. The reason for doing this is basically, you obviously aren't going to need these Fellows if there's another minstrel sack in it, and you might as well go for the extra bolster, courage, and raise the spirit healing, and that's raid wide. So if you crit this on the target, it will splash onto everybody nearby and give that buff. And then obviously the crit chance on that with the stun, although bosses can't be stunned, and then damage reflect, which also spreads onto everyone. And as well, one thing that's not here, but it is true of Piercing Cries, I think everybody gets 1,700 parry chance, so it's more survivability on everybody as well, giving them that extra parry chance and that damage reflect. So that's pretty much blue as far as I can tell. I mean, if you have any questions, whatever, just throw them at me. I'll be more than happy to explain that to you. And yeah. Now on to your Yellow Minstrel. Yellow Minstrel is kind of a hard minstrel to explain, because a lot of the times what you see is hard to kind of experiment with other than in combat, and a lot of the combat is kind of hard to play around with because, you know, a lot of the times it's quite hard runs unless you're doing some of the older runs. So obviously now take note of what you're losing from blue. You're obviously not going to get the extra stronger heals from crits. You're not going to get the bolster splash, the shortened rally, the extra 100% Cord of Salvation. All of these things, they're all gone now. When we go into yellow, we get different buffs. We basically start with 2 anthems, something about Perfect Ballads, useless, Grip by Fear, it's not bad actually. I mean, you can definitely use it in raids. Song of Restoration is pretty decent, especially if you're running COSs. Main ones I want to point out obviously is Courts of the Second Age, attack speed and induction reduction. It is big. I mean, obviously, as you see in blue, we went to the point where we were reducing inductions and everything, and it kind of gets to the point where your heals happen a lot quicker, from like 2.3 second heals all the way to pretty much almost instant casts, depending on your crits. Obviously, when I get to skills, I'll actually show you practically how that speeds up. This is a fellowship-wide buff. Unfortunately, obviously, Quarters of the Second Age is a 5 meter range, so it's very, very close by. But if you are stacking this, it's attack speed and induction reduction. So that is a really big boost to DPS in general. Tails, so basically a little aura that you get to carry with you, which is very good. Song of Aid, I mean, obviously for hunters to be able to use improved focus in combat, not a bad thing. I mean, captains love the defeat response. The rest of it, yeah, it's fairly average. It's not really anything else that really tickles. I mean, I'm not sure with the Guardian, but I'm assuming block and parry response is semi-decent. And yeah, I don't know if the burglar crit response is any good, but that's that. And then obviously ending off with 3 anthems. Let's take that then and go into it. Now, if you're going to build a yellow-blue build, you're actually going to build exactly how I showed you before, but just from a yellow perspective. So your trait tree is going to look very, very similar. Obviously, remembering now that every single point you put into blue costs double what it did before. And let's take those back. Get up there. Perfect. That's pretty much what I would imagine the best yellow blue build is going to look like. Pretty much getting the exact same buffs. Okay, yes, we're losing the outgoing healing modifier. That is a bit of a bugger. If you want, you can drop points and try shove them in there and whatever. The most important is obviously the anthems. You're going to be juggling 3 anthems. The attack mitigation that comes with it. The Inspire Fellows. Remember, you don't have the control now of a splash bolster. So fellowship-wide heals are going to be your bread and butter stuff. Inspire Fellows, Court of Salvation, and Triumphant Spirit. Those are going to be what's going to save your fellowship. Remembering as well, I'm going to go more into it, but Court of Salvation gives the heal over time to the fellowship on which the target comes from within, I think it's 10 or 20 meter range from that target. So if the blue minstrel casts the Court of Salvation on your group, your fellowship gets the heal over time. Just remembering that. Exact same things. Extra crit chance. You're still getting up to that 35% crit chance. Obviously, over here, like you see, minus inductions every time you get a crit. But now remembering, you've got 3 anthems stacking. I mean, you saw when I stacked the 1 resonant anthem of the Third Age, how my my casting speed went drastically down on Bolster Courage. Remembering now, if you stack anthems correctly, which is in the order of Anthem of War, Third Age, Anthem of War, Third Age, Anthem of War, Third Age, you'll actually at all times maintain a Third Age, an Anthem of War, and a Third Age, which means you'll have minus 50% induction, so an extra 25 compared to blue, plus 20% outgoing healing, which is 10 more than blue, and then at the same time, you're going to be able to decrease your inductions even further with critted heals. And then on top of that, you'll obviously have the induction and attack speed buff, which affects yourself as a healer coming from your Court of the Second Age. So you're actually going to be able to heal much quicker than a blue minstrel can. And you're going to be actually be able to heal for larger amounts than a blue minstrel can. Obviously, you're going to lose things like, 4% outgoing healing modifier or even 6% outgoing healing modifier. Doesn't even really matter. But you're actually gaining another 10% and you're healing a lot quicker. You'll pretty much at most points be doing instant heals in yellow if you're properly racing as a yellow minstrel. On top of that, yes, you have a lot more heals to pick from in terms of the speed. And to put it this way, I mean, a lot of people get freaked out by not being able to splash their bolsters and kind of have that control. But at the same time, you're going to be healing so much quicker that you'll be able to flick right through your fellowship healing them. And a lot of people get scared because they're like, yeah, but like, you know, the heals aren't that big. I mean, it's lies in terms of the fact of you've seen you're going to get the extra 10% outgoing healing. You also have the extra mastery, 7,000 mastery, which is technically, 7,300 outgoing healing as well, which should equate to another like 1 point whatever percent, probably 1% I'd imagine. And on top of that, you're going to be healing in the DPS group. The guys aren't going to have massive morale pools. I mean, the largest will probably be the captain, maybe sat on about 90 or 100k, depending on how poorly he's built. So to heal through that is actually going to be really quick to switch between them. And in general, yellow minstrels have the largest cross heals, because if you think about it this way, if a blue minstrel cross heals, he's just getting that bolster. The splash is then landed on his own fellowship, where a yellow minstrel will get out bigger heals in a single target cross healing, and then obviously buff the group with 22k mastery and extra 15% attack damage, things like this. Let's have a look at it another way. Let's have a look at a few different builds you can go for. Obviously, if you want to end up with Call to Greatness for the extra hunter damage, it's not a bad thing. Obviously, Runekeepers don't really get anything decent from that. The minstrel yourself will get something decent, which, as you can see, there's an extra 10% outgoing healing and 5-second Court of Salvations for 15 seconds. It's not bad. The only problem I find is to build up to it and waste all my trade points in this area here. Obviously, there's not really the greatest things unless you go for like core reflex and for the extra mastery and the hammer hand bubbles, and then try to do something like that where you pretty much keep an extra mastery up on a hunter. It is doable. I've been running a few series with it. I just find it a waste of points. Another build I wanted to show you, which is kind of a hard build, and I'm going to have to kind of amber my way through it a bit, is what I call my yellow, red, blue build. This is what you're going to look for, a yellow, red, blue build. If you have Warden tanking or some sort of minstrel DPS, which is silly actually, I'd scratch the minstrel DPS, say hunters using light oils and stuff, I would go for obviously the Quarterman. I would take out this, I can't do it now, but I would take this out and go something like that. Obviously, if you don't have that, just throw it straight all up into vitality, more survivability on the minstrel. Let me explain this to you. I mean, we've spoken through all of these before. If you have tactical damage or tactical damage tank, or 2, 3, 4 RKs in a fellowship with a red cappy buffing, the only thing that's going to be making your group better is the extra attack speed and more damage. So obviously what you're doing here is in red you're going for extra extra 10% tactical damage. I'll multiply that over 3, it's going to end up being 30% extra outgoing damage. Apply that with the extra 5% you already got. If you have good DPS, they will manage to buff themselves to be capped when you're in blue. If you have even better DPS, they manage to swap out to cap themselves when you're in yellow and put into something more important, whether crits or whatever they put themselves into. If you have an RK or 2 or 3 or 4 RKs and you're stacking this, they will end up on 445% outgoing damage, which is a true 10% outgoing damage. Because everything in Lotro, when you think of percentages, is actually flat percentages. They're not actually gains. When you see extra 5% damage, if your attack damage is 300%, you're getting 305. It's not 5% of your total, it's a 5% on your outgoing. So if you have an extra 45% tactical damage, it's 445% tactical damage, assuming they're capped, which is a true over 10%, which actually would be 11% outgoing damage increase. this buff is massive. And usually if I run a COS with an RK and a captain tank or whatever, this is definitely the build I want to use. Obviously keeping the mitigations up. Obviously I'm not stacking anthems on this build, so as you can see I don't really need to keep them up. An extra 5-second duration is a bit of a bugger, but it just means I have to refresh anthems more often, and usually I refresh them way before I need to. I've got the Inspire Fellows obviously because it's cheap in yellow, and it's my fellowship heal because obviously I'm losing out my triumphant spirit now and my induction increase from follower, which I just can't reach. On top of that, I've got my crits, I've got my stuns, I've got an extra 3% healing on Major Ballad, I've got more vitality, morale, an extra 1,000, not much. And then on top of that, I'm just keeping my crit magnitude and crit chance up. Because I'm going to get the crits from red anyway, I might as well go more crit than in terms of going outgoing healing. Obviously, I want to reduce the inductions and then Court of Salvation for my big heal in terms of this build. So this is pretty much what your yellow, red, blue would look like. You can variate it. We used to run this quite a lot in Rakithos and Vaticor and things like that back at the 105 cap. Obviously, we didn't have as many trade points at that time, so I don't think I could even get to Court of Salvation. I'm pretty happy I have it though in the end. And yeah, it really boosts your DPS when you have RKs in the group, and especially if you have, say, 2 blue minstrels healing in the tank group, or even 1 blue minstrel who's confident, and you can run this build. You're pretty much ensuring that the DPS group will heal themselves up off the revealing mark, and maybe the only one you have to watch out for is the captain. And then on top of that, you can just focus on cross heals, obviously using your Court of Salvation and things like that. And so, surprisingly enough, really good heals per second out of a build like this. The only things you're not going to get is you're not going to get the refresh on the Court of Second Age, because obviously we can't reach that, so you can't reset that. Obviously in the previous build I showed you, you could reset it, and that would pretty much mean that you could, you know, keep refreshing that, and even though it lasts 10 seconds with a 30-second cooldown, you could maintain it maybe more like 25 seconds with a 30-second cooldown with refreshes. But now obviously you're just going to have to rely on that. But if your extra outgoing damage is pretty much what's going to make this build very viable. Okay, last thing I wanted to mention about trade trees is anthem stacking and just a couple of views of a few trade trees. I'm a cheeky bastard with lots of trade trees, and I don't expect you to be half as douchebaggy as me. These are my stacking trees. Remembering, in fact, that you can't stack a blue and a red on top of each other. The whole idea behind stacking is you're going to stack a couple of anthems from your double, your triple, and your single anthem pools, and that pretty much shows you exactly how you're going to stack. If you don't want to have a blue stacking tree like me, which is literally all this is used for, is stacking. I mean, I could run this into the moors. I'd actually just, definitely could. It doesn't really matter. Pretty much what I'm going for here is I'm going for blue with all the resets, all the crit chance, the reduced inductions. Don't really matter too much about bolsters because I'm not healing really through it unless I took this to the moors. And I obviously want 10% outgoing healing. Bearing in mind, in fact, remembering I've got my cooldown full. You have to have that full, and extended anthems is a necessity. If you don't have a blue set for resetting and buffing, use your blue set to reset your anthems, and then just switch to your red. And then obviously from your red you can stack to get the extra 10% tactical outgoing damage. Remember, in case when you stack, start off on the tree that you're going to heal in. So if you're going to heal in blue, start with blue. If you're going to heal in yellow, start in yellow. And especially if you're going to heal in yellow, start in your 3 anthemed yellow rather than your 2. So this is in fact a healing tree. And I've actually probably could take out one of these points and put it into something a bit more useful. It's actually bad on my part. So I would not stack from this. So say I was going to heal now in yellow, which is 90% of the case. I will go to my yellow red build because it has the extra tactical damage. I would hit Cry of the Chorus, stack 2 anthems, switch over to my blue, reset, switch over to my half yellow, And what I mean by half yellow is when you pick a yellow trait tree, you can have 2 anthems. That's the bonus of a yellow. When you get right down to the bottom of your yellow tree, you can have 3 anthems. So if you build a trait tree with yellow, with full anthem duration and cooldown, as you can see, and also you have the extra 10% tactical damage, you can stack 2 anthems from here, and it doesn't count against your 1 anthem or your 3 anthem trait trees, because this is a 2 anthem trait tree. So after I'd reset the first time, I'd switch to my half yellow, get 2 anthems from here, switch back to my blue. Now, when I'm healing to reset, and obviously that's how you reset, is I'm using SOS and Court of Salvation. SOS because it's pretty much an instant, there's no induction to it, and obviously you don't have to be in combat like Major Ballad. And then Court of Salvation because it's 10 seconds with a very high crit chance, because remember, we have the extra crit chance from our allies. So what you're doing then is you're healing, and when you get the reset on this blue one, i.e. your second reset you need, as soon as I hit Court of Salvation, I usually let the tank or the raid leader know that I'm ready to go, stack my Anthem of War, my 3rd age anthem, and remember, that's how you stack it every time, is Anthem of War, 3rd age anthem, and then the last anthem before the Court of Salvation, the Cry of Chorus runs out, is your Anthem of War. Then you switch. Anthem of War, 3rd age anthem, Anthem of War, switch. So you're getting 2 Anthem of Wars and 1 Anthem of the 3rd age every single time. Once I get my last reset in my yellow, because remember yellow you only need 2 resets, blue you need 3. As I get it, I put my Anthem of War 3rd age. I'm already doing the countdown, and as I switch to my healing build, we're going into combat. And the reason for that is, after my 2nd reset, I don't want to have to try fish for a 3rd reset because my reset chance isn't as good. Remembering now I only have 5 anthems up, but as soon as they go into combat and my minstrel gets locked into combat, obviously my ballads will stay up and I don't have to fish for another reset, which means then I actually hit my 6th anthem in combat if I'm in yellow. Obviously if I'm healing in blue, I have all 6 anthems up before I enter combat. But the bonus about that is, as soon as then I go into combat, I hit and I go into my next Anthem of War, 6 anthems are up. And then the anthems that I'm refreshing, the first 2 anthems are the 2 anthems that I got from my yellow build. And it was my yellow-red build, but it was still my yellow build with 3 anthems. So the first 2 I refreshed mean that I still maintain 6 anthems for that duration. Only when I get to my 3rd anthem that I'm resetting do I actually start dropping anthems. And then we'll go down to the 3 anthems that I'll maintain for the rest of the fight. Obviously, like I showed you before, if I'm going to heal in this build and not stack in this build, I do not actually need to have all 5 trait points into my yellow, so it's a little bit of a waste. So just to fix that, let's just immediately fix that, so next time I actually go into a fight I don't have to waft over it. And obviously, like I said before, you do not need to have 3-3, seems about right. You obviously do not need to have bolster courage in yellow, and I'll explain that more in the next video. Thanks for watching.